Hello, friends! I can see the chat is already off the hook. And before. Haha! Oh man, much more high tech and fun. Hello, everybody! Welcome to whatever this is. So, this is the first episode of a little show that I'm going to run in long time ago, long time ago, when I retired Quickstep about a month ago. I did say that I was going to restart something to fill its void, and I was going to find out basically a time to do a stream on at prime time for the U.S. audience, one time a week, for several hours. So you guys have me for like 3 hours, as far as I can tell, unless like you guys get really bored of me. Anyways, I'm still figuring out what this is going to be, but it's called Step Back Tonight. It is a show that is going to be both on YouTube and simultaneously on Twitch. So if you guys like to use Twitch's stuff rather than the YouTube stuff, you can go to twitch.tv/stepbackhistory and you can join in the chat there. I've got both chats open, so I will be paying attention. So don't worry, I'm not going to like prefer one over the other. And as far as what I'm going to do with this show, I'm going to try and change it up. You know, sometimes I know that some people like the typical thing is to play the video games, and sometimes it's to just answer questions like I'm probably going to do tonight. And sometimes I'll try to see if I can snag the occasional guest, or who knows. This show can be anything that I want it to be, so we'll play around with format and stuff, and we'll just all have a really good time. All right, Step Back Tonight. What if it was like a talk show to get YouTubers to come on, have a chat, and talk about their projects like late night shows? That's a good idea. I do think that the pressure to get a guest for every single week would be pretty tough, but it is a thing that I can do sometimes, especially because I know I have some friends who would love to get to come in. And if you are a content creator who would love to talk about projects they're working on, we'll go for it. Yeah, but besides that, I think I'll talk to you guys for a bit. Maybe we'll play some video games. I haven't any planned tonight. And maybe we'll finish off with the good old-fashioned game of Quiplash, because I know that you guys really enjoy doing that, but we'll see where that goes. Anyways, what I'm saying is it's wide open. And I did get one person who did a thing saying do paid chats move higher on the wait list to have me address them. I think that is a thing that I will do. I know that feels kind of skeezy, but I do need to pay the bills a little bit, so I will do it to encourage people to do something. But still, if anybody here is a veteran of my Thursday streams, you know that I try really hard to get to any questions that people ask me. So don't feel like it's going to that you need to fork up some dough in order to be heard. I'll be around. All right. I live in Oh, wait. I should answer this question from Craig Morrison correctly. I live in Glasgow, Scotland. It's fucking late, just after midnight. Also, how fucking amazing is Emma Goldman? Emma Goldman is fucking amazing. Emma Goldman's like so for those who don't know her, she was a anarchist labor activist in America in the late 19th and early 20th century, who was a Jewish immigrant from Russia, and she was just a badass right up until the day she died. She even got kicked out of the country at one point. But yeah, just just it's a thing that happens. Don't be like Warski Live. Who's Warski Live? I don't know who that is. But yeah, I do think that I will. Like I said, I'm going to try to be as egalitarian as possible. I'm trying my best. But tonight will be a little bit of an experiment. I'm going to hang out with you guys for a bit. If things start to run out of steam, we can maybe move in a different direction. But for the moment, it's good. And as I said, if you want to come on stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/stepbackhistory, that is a place you can also watch this show. And I can already see 3 of you are there. So far so good. Man, so many. Oh, well, you said you were from Scotland, so I thought I'd throw on the Scottish accent. So yeah, there's a lot of Europeans in my streaming audience. That's pretty cool. I just got Andy Worski, the person who burned his nipple on stream. Well, I don't think that that's a thing that I would like to do. No, I'm good. Anyways, first of all, I'd love to get to know who's going to be showing up on Tuesday night shows. So I'm going to talk to y'all in the audience. I know it's really late for you European folks, but if you didn't know, in the hour before I release a Step Back video, so on Thursday at it's 1 p.m. here in America, or here in Canada, but it's I think it's 6 p.m. in UK and 7 p.m. in Central European time. I do a different stream where I just do I do a video where I talk to people for an hour and a new video comes out. So that's like a thing. If you want, I know this is like really late, and so I wanted this stream to be something that I could do at prime time for North America, because I feel like doing my stream always in the middle of the afternoon is ending up with people losing out. All right, I should probably start up my text. My little handy dandy Notepad++ text file, so I can keep on top of all the questions. So, hi. Okay, so the first question we got here comes from Raymus Studio, and wants to know: do you think that in some material conditions of the world, a more Marxist-Leninist system of socialism would be better, and in other conditions, a more ANCOM system, depending upon conditions and culture? Let's see. Okay, yeah, start me off with the easy questions. Okay, so basically the question comes down to whether or not we can have, whether or not, depending upon certain types of contexts, whether or not we should default to a more authoritarian form of collectivization rather than an anarchist one. And I would say no. I do think that a Marxist-Leninist form of collectivization is never, like, it's not only not going to work for any culture, because no one really likes being oppressed, but I would say that on top of that, the kind of tanky Marxism, the Marxist-Leninism type thinking is also fairly detrimental to the human experience. Like, it's not like it would not only not work, like there's no culture that would prefer to be dominated by a dictator, but like on top of that, it would hurt the cause of actually establishing a just economy, because Marxism-Leninism just creates a sort of distinguished political class, and it's not exactly a communist society. It is a redistribution of the capitalist assets of a country to the government, and you really can't have one without the other. You really would have to. It's basically just capitalism run by the state. You would really need to get rid of it. There's not that much all that different between capital. Like there's not that much functionally different between a state capitalist state like the USSR and say like a state capitalist banana republic. Um, Basically, more or less, oligarchies run by a small cabal of people who run the country. All right. Okay. So that's... Alright. Fohammer is... Oh, we got our first chat in the Twitch chat. So Andy Worski, more well known as having a lot of fash on his show and basically just letting them spew their propaganda and just nodding along. I will promise you now that if I know that somebody is a fash, they are not going to be on this show. I am not going to platform people who disregard the humanity of others. That's not a thing. That is not a thing that I believe that my limited platform is for. This is going to be a place, if I have guests on and we talk about something, it's going to be people who I've hopefully vetted as much as possible. Now, I will give myself an out in saying that if I accidentally put somebody on, and I didn't know, and someone points out to me and I find out evidence that they actually are fascist, and which would be really weird because I would try to hopefully vet the people who come on my show before they do. I'll give myself the out and say that I will apologize and they will not be allowed on that show again. But I will never, just like sit and nod along, that's for sure. Okay. So, let's, alright, we got some more questions. Jenga Tree, are you still playing Legend of Zelda on the Switch? I've taken a break from that for a while. I think the last time that I had, like, a really good Breath of the Wild session was when I was on the plane going to VidCon. Actually, maybe on the plane coming back from VidCon, too. So that was back in June. So it's been a couple months since I've done some real good Breath of the Wild time. Right now, the Switch time has been dominated by my wife because she has gotten she got Minecraft for the Switch, and so she's been playing Minecraft basically like in her free time, and that has been her main activity. And so that's like a thing. Okay. I should get back into playing Zelda at some point. I haven't in a long time, and I really need to pick it up again because it was a fun game. There's nothing I didn't like about it. It's just that it's a console game, and I just don't even think about console games. Okay, so Argos Panoptes wants to know: have you read Plutarch's Lives? No, I have not read Plutarch's Lives. Pirate, the creator. Are you a music fan, Tristan? What are some of your favorite musicians and albums? Ooh, that's a tough one. Okay. So I will say, hey, only bro 555. So, oh man. Okay, so music. I used to be in a band when I was in high school, and I will say that I used to be way more into music than I am now. I've backed off quite a bit, which sounds so weird because like nobody doesn't listen to music, but then there's been so much competition for people's attention that the time that I would normally spend listening to music, which by the way right now is only while I'm editing video pretty much, is fairly sparse. And so, when I was a kid, I really liked Iron Maiden. And I still do. I think Iron Maiden's a really good band. But, honestly, at the moment, I know this... Oh, man, this is going to expose me as such a normie, but Imagine Dragons is pretty good. The music's pretty cool. I haven't listened to a ton of I haven't, listened to a full album or anything like that, but the songs I find pretty good. Honestly, I just listen to my Discover Weekly every week. I have been so checked out of having good taste. If I were to get back into music in a big way, I'd really have to think about what that would be. Okay. So, Zed Cop Sports Highlights 2018. All right. What kind of shoes do you have on? I'm not wearing any shoes. I'm just wearing socks. I think maybe this is like a thing that I was told that my wife is American, and she told me that Americans wear shoes indoors for some reason. And that's like not really a thing here. And so, sorry, this is not a thing. So I'm not wearing shoes. Alright, Ian Lease. What if Doug Ford makes a YouTube free speech policy? Oh my. Alright, there's a lot of hoops to jump through, but I should probably pick up... So I should probably get everybody up to speed. Maybe this can be like my first monologue of many on this whole crazy thing. So, alright. So, in June, Canada, well, Ontario, made a very strange decision. And so we had an election where we had basically the collapse of our centrist center-right, basically peak fishhook theory party, the Liberal Party of Ontario. They had basically imploded after like 15 years of running the country. And after 15 years of running the country, they just had built up so much. Is there phone interference? What's this? Oh, interface. Okay. Never mind. Okay, so basically the Liberal Party was collapsing, and we were going to the polls, and everyone thought that what's his name, Pat Brown. Okay, so Pat Brown was going to be the next Premier of Ontario, and he was the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party, which at the time was like this also center-right, maybe a little bit more right-wing party than the Liberals. Because basically Ontario has been bouncing between two identical political parties for pretty much its whole history. And then the Me Too movement came to Ontario, and Pat Brown was exposed by at least 3 women to be basically a sexual harasser, and yeah, he did not last long. And so Pat Brown was basically strong-armed out of the party. He still claims that it's all a setup and that he was defrauded. He then tried to run. So they had to start this was like 4 months before the election. He then tried to run for leadership of the party again after he'd been kicked out, but they wouldn't let him on the ballot. And yeah, Kathleen Wynne was basically Pokemon Go to the polls. Who we'll get to her in a second. Well, we have so much time, my friends. We have so much time to talk about stupid Canadian Ontario politics. And I live right by Canadian. I live right by the Ontario version of Parliament, so I get this all the time. So the Conservatives were then running a race to see who would lead the party. Patrick Brown tried to get involved in the race, was kicked out, not even allowed. It was a joke. So we had 3 leaders running for leadership of the party. Basically, the first one was not Nancy. Somebody Mulrooney. I can't remember her name. She's the Attorney General of Ontario now. That's why this is a really bad thing to mess up. But she is the Prime Minister's daughter, the former Prime Minister's daughter. So we had she's the daughter of the Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, who was PM in the 80s. So basically, he was like the Canadian version of Ronald Reagan. So imagine Ronald Reagan's daughter, some guy that really had no chance to win ever. And then we had Doug Ford. Doug freaking Ford. And if somebody can remember the name of or if someone can Google real quick Brian Mulroney's daughter's name, who's the Attorney General of Ontario now, that'd be really good. So, Doug Ford. Doug Ford is a party boss. Like, he's just like this horribly, like, just despicable force within Toronto politics. So he's been in the, like, city government of Toronto forever. And he's extraordinarily wealthy. He has, like, he comes from, like, some sort of weird sticker fortune. And his late brother was Caroline Mulroney. That's it. Caroline was the name I was looking for. Yeah. So Doug Ford was like this big, wet, special boy who was just this complete, like, jackass in Toronto politics. And his brother was Rob Ford. And if that name sounds familiar to you, it should, because Rob Ford was the mayor of Toronto. He was the one who got internationally famous because he turned out was smoking crack while mayor of Toronto. This was all going down while I was doing my master's in, like, American studies, so I had one friend who was from Toronto, and we were talking about this all the time because it was just such a shit show. Because, like, he would deny it, and then, like, the next day they'd be like, oh yeah, we have a video of it, and he'd be like, oh, I don't know anything about that video that I do not know about that I am in. Since, like, it was a whole thing. Eventually he admitted that he smoked crack, and he ended up putting himself in rehab. He lost the mayoral race to John Tory, who is the current mayor of Toronto, and very soon, actually no, his brother ran against him because while this was all going on, after the fires had died down a little bit, Rob Ford found out that he actually had cancer, and so he dropped out of the race, and his brother ran for mayor and lost to John Tory. And so that and, like, his background show that, like, Doug Ford had this this issue, like, he just had this long-term grudge against Toronto politics, and he hated all the people in Toronto. And his whole voter base was, like, the suburbs, the friggin' white-ass suburbs. And so he is in the leadership race for Ontario, and somehow in the PC leadership race, he actually wins. And he became leader of the Progressive Conservative Party. This is a guy who the Progressive Conservatives didn't even want to run for. Like, at first he wasn't going to run for leader. He was just going to get a provincial seat. So he was going to run for MPP, which stands for Minister of Provincial Parliament. And he like, the party tried to stop him from even doing that. And then when he runs for leader, the Progressive Conservatives tried to stop him from even doing that. And so the entire party, the entire Progressive Conservative Party despises him. And yet he wins because he gets, like, angry rabble-rousers to come in, to join his cause. And so Doug Ford becomes the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party, mostly by making an alliance with the, like, hard right, very socially conservative people, which a lot of Canadian conservatives tend to keep at arm's length, because in Canada being socially conservative is kind of a taboo thing to be. But he embraced them, basically getting mad at the fact that Kathleen Wynne put forward in 2015 a progressive sex ed curriculum. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that whole story that Rob Ford eventually died of his cancer. He's dead. But this is about Doug Ford. So he, like, rails against this sex ed curriculum that got put in place in 2015 that teaches like that gender is a spectrum and that, you know, some people like to date and marry people of the same gender as them, and some people, you know, if you want to do something sexy times with them, maybe you should teach, you know, you should get consent first, and like things like that, you know, basic things that make sense if you're a sane person. But if you're a off the wall, like right wing, like social conservative, you freak the fuck out and you just end up just like just having a freaking conniption fit over this. And so they got Doug Ford's back, and Doug Ford eventually ended up winning. And then the other contenders, the other parties, were the current premier, so the incumbent premier, whose name was, her name is Kathleen Wynne, and she's the leader of the Liberal Party, and she, albeit she was very Pokemon Go to the polls. And for Ontario politics, she was very socially progressive. As I said, she put in that sex ed bill. But she was very much a liberal, which means that she pushed for the privatization, or partial privatization, she would say, of our power system. And just tons of cuts for important things. A lot of promises she made to improve mental health never happened. All of a sudden, in the 2018 budget, she all of a sudden promised all of these things. Although it's important to note that she was the first female premier of Ontario, which is a bit of a victory, and she was also a queer woman. So a queer woman premier of Ontario, the first one ever. So she does have some, but she's still like, she still is mired in this Liberal Party that had been, at this point, dominating for 15 years. And was just, you know, any party that's been in power for 15 years, it gets stagnant, it gets corrupt, it just gets nasty. So she was like, she had an uphill battle. Now the thing is that this is like the second election in a row where Kathleen Wynne had an uphill fight, because the last election, everyone was thinking the exact same things. Like, liberals have been in power for too long, it's time for them to go. As long as the progressive conservatives can put somebody up who is sane, it'll be like, you know, an easy win for the progressive conservatives. And the progressive conservatives put up a guy named Tim Hudak, who promised these like absolutely nonsense cuts to the federal government, like cutting 500,000 jobs from the government in an effort to make more jobs. So everyone realized he had no economic sense whatsoever, and he lost the election handily. But so Kathleen Wynne, you know, she was like, she knew that like her number was going to be up someday, but she thought maybe that she could pull it out of a hat. And then you have the third party. You have the NDP, which in Canada is our Democratic Socialist Party. You'd probably know, they stand for the New Democratic Party of Ontario, or the New Democratic Party of Canada. There's like, it gets confusing because in Canada, a lot of the parties at the federal level also have parties at the provincial level, but they're different organizations. Like, for example, the Progressive Conservatives are a Ontario party, but in federal government, the Progressive Conservative Party actually hasn't existed since 2003. They merged with a more hard-right party and became just the Conservative Party. So the Progressive Conservatives don't exist anymore, but they exist at the Ontario level. Anyways, Kathleen Wynne thought she could pull this uphill battle out of her butt. And then the NDP has this other leader, and her name is Andrea Horwath. And she's like an Ontario, she's a Hamilton MPP. She's known for being very angry but not having much substance to her anger, but nonetheless had been running the party forever. She's been leader of the party as long as I can remember. But she's always like been a competent leader. She just was never bringing home election victories. But the NDP aren't necessarily, their goals aren't necessarily to form government. But then, after the first debate, she really comes out as being like really, really like dark horse candidate. And with everybody bailing on Kathleen Wynne and people starting to become terrified of Doug Ford, especially looking down south and everyone saying that like Doug Ford had very much this Donald Trumpish, look to him. That because of Donald Trump's sort of style, that there was not that much hope. Like everyone was scared that we were going to bring Trump politics to Canada, and so people got really worried. And so the NDP started just taking off in popularity. The NDP enjoyed a boost like it had never enjoyed before. And Andrea Horwath, this person who's this is like not her first election. She's been in several elections beforehand. Is all of a sudden a huge deal. And people start saying that the NDP have a shot of forming government. It gets neck and neck. And then, the Liberals just start collapsing in the polls. And the, weekend before the election, maybe, less than a week before the election, in an interview with the government broadcaster, the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, our version of, PBS or something like that, Kathleen Wynne admits that she's not going to win. So she says in the interview that I know that the Liberals, it's not looking good. The Liberals are not going to win. They're not going to form government. But she doesn't tell people to vote for the NDP. And this is ultimate fishhook theory stuff here, guys. She says that that we can't we can't let Doug Ford, this tin pot dictator become premier. But we also can't let the fiscally irresponsible New Democrats, who won't privatize anything, form government. And so she makes that claim. She says, vote for Liberals still. Even if you're going to lose, vote for the Liberals. Because it will, we want to have as best a position. We want to be kingmaker, basically. Which is, if you, in Canadian politics terms, kingmaker is basically somebody who is a party that might not have the most votes, but can act as the middle ground between two parties and say basically if one party wants to pass something, they need votes from the Liberal Party in order to get through, and vice versa. Hey, lever detected. So she says, vote for as many of you vote for the Liberals as possible, even though we know we're going to lose. And election day comes. And I was a volunteer. I actually made videos for the NDP. I canvassed. I knocked on doors, all that kind of stuff. And do you guys have MMP? We do not have MMP. I'll talk a little bit about that later, but we specifically don't because we have because Justin Trudeau sucks. But we do have we have a very typical Westminster Parliament. So election day comes, and everyone's getting out the vote, and it looks like Doug Ford's going to win, and he does. Gets a majority government, which means he can pass anything he wants. But the NDP make huge gains. And that's kind of where we are now. Since then, since June, so 3 months ago, a little bit over 3 months ago now, Doug Ford has repealed the sex ed curriculum, going back to a sex ed school curriculum from 1998, in which he's already facing more than one litigation due to that. He has tried to he sold everything on something called Buck-a-Beer, which was this idea that in like 10 years ago, the government made the minimum price of beer $1.25, and he reduced it to $1, even though nobody is going to charge $1 for beer. But he did it. It's not going to do anything, but he did it. And third thing, he decides that he's going to take out his petty grievances against Toronto politics, and he's going to take the number of like voted representatives in like Toronto city stuff and cut it in half, and basically gerrymander the city so that only right-wing candidates will win. And when the courts pointed out that this is a blatantly illegal thing to do, he pulls something called the Notwithstanding Clause. This happened last week. And basically the Notwithstanding Clause is where a premier or a provincial government can say, yes, this violates the Constitution, but I don't care. Like, it's too... typically it's used in cases like in Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan has a secular and Catholic school board that have been around since forever. Basically, historically, it was a way to segregate French people. And a few months ago, Saskatchewan decided that they were going to pull the Notwithstanding Clause because even though having Catholic school boards violates the Constitution, the Catholic school board is too integral to the political, like it's too important for the way that Saskatchewan identifies itself, so they're just going to do it. Another example is at Quebec. When we signed the Constitution in the early 80s, Quebec did not sign because they had major objections to some of the things that were in the Constitution, and so Quebec said that they were going to violate the Constitution with every single law they passed. And so they said that they intentionally said that every single law they passed, even if it was just something like tiny regular laws, they would invoke the Notwithstanding Clause in order to basically make a stink about how much they disliked the Constitution. Doug Ford pulls it because he wants to take out his dumb grievances with Toronto politics out on them. He wants to punish them. And so I think the government is now in like 5 lawsuits after being in government for just a little over 3 months. It's nuts. It's nuts. So that's the situation we're in now. It's been 3 months. His re-election is in 2022. So who knows where we go from here. All right. That was a very long answer, but I thought that was a fun story because this is the political meltdown that we're having in Ontario right now. And like my wife works in the Ontario government, I work for a civil liberties organization, so we are like one of those litigations against the Ontario government for the sex ed curriculum is being filed by the organization I work for. So I've been hearing a lot about this stuff. They hit double digits. Oh boy. So yeah, that's where we're at. I mean, I could expand it. I could expand it out even further, but maybe somebody will ask a question about Maxime Bernier and the People's Party of Canada, or the Parti Populaire de Canada that just got announced. But I'm not going to overburden you with Canadian politics since I just went on a huge 10-minute long rant about it, so I'll give you guys a break. But yeah, I guess that's I said, this thing was going to take up the quick step effect, right? And I guess that's the equivalent of what a quick step would have been. Please, by the way, chat, Twitch, or YouTube, otherwise, Discord, my Discord. If you, on any of those things, have suggestions for how I should manage this show, if you have criticisms or suggestions, I am open to hearing about it. This is an experimental format, so, and I'm going to be doing this show every week, so please, just, I want to listen. I want to find out how to make the best show for you guys I can. The rant was over 20 minutes. Holy crap. Okay, I am so sorry. I'm not going to go into more Canadian politics unless somebody really wants to know. Okay. Okay. So, Ian Lees wants... Oh. Okay, Anarcho Fledgling. Are you going to participate with the discontent content? Also, what do you think of the stuff so far? I don't exactly know what this is. Is this the leftist thing? Like, I don't know. There's stuff that, like, I've been told I'm not supposed to talk about, so I don't know what you're referencing exactly. All right. I'm very sorry about the length of the Canadian politics rant. It's a big deal going on here. It's like this is like Trumpism finally came to Canada, and so it's a thing. Okay. Are you okay, so this is by Dan Pike. Hello, Dan Pike. Danny boy, have you or are you familiar with critical pedagogy and the lights of Paulo Freire? I am not. Critical pedagogy does sound pretty interesting, though. I'll have to look that one up. Sounds good. Okay. 255 AD, who is a patron. Thank you very much, 255 AD. You are awesome. Do you think the racist obsession with bone structure ultimately comes down to an attempt to rationalize thinking people who look like they are superior or worth caring about? Okay. I'm just going to take down a few more questions and I'll answer your question. Sorry about that. Okay. I definitely thought the rant was interesting. I just didn't expect it to be so long. I'm very sorry about that. Okay. So, racist obsession with bone structures. This is, I think the reason why is because the bone structure angle, first of all, a lot of the scientific racism stuff was made to post hoc rationalize why they thought white people were superior. That was the whole thing they were trying to do. They tried to look for any example they could. And if you go far enough into the past, you'll find all sorts of really weird explanations. Bone structure is just the one that survived. But like there was people who used to think that like having dark skin was akin to having a mole that covered your whole body. Yeah, there were some strange folks back then. The reason why I think they obsess with bone structure is because there was it's because that's the one more thing that they can attribute to it just survived, but in the Victorian times there was a science called phrenology, which was about the measurement of skulls in order to determine aspects about a person, and honestly I think it all comes back to that. You have access to money, but you chose to use it to help make free content for everyone. Like, it's a great thing to do. So yeah, skulls. So the phrenology thing just survived, and things like phrenology and bone structure study for race were thrown out after World War II when they turned out to not have the ability to do things. You know, like when they found out that it led to the Holocaust, for example. And so I would imagine if you're a racist, you would think that, oh, this is just like political correctness of science, where they got rid of all this real science because they just didn't want to offend people anymore, just because a little Holocaust happened. And so, like, I imagine it's sort of this pushback against that idea. And so here we are. All right. Can you grow mutton chops from the bathroom stinks? I'm very sorry to hear about your bathroom stinking, but could you grow mutton chops, please? Oh man, I had mutton chops for like most of my life. I'm the only reason I don't have mutton chops now is because I decided to go for full beard instead of a goatee, which is what I had for a good chunk of my undergrad days and such. So before that, I basically did have mutton chops. It's a fairly common thing. It's a very different that. Okay. Oh, worst hot take you've seen all week. Honestly, I don't spend that much time looking at hot takes. I guess the worst hot take that I've seen all week isn't from last week, but it was from an episode of a podcast I was listening to about how political discourse should be more like the Food Network. And it was a whole bunch of really dumb ideas. Yeah, it was it was pretty dumb concept. Okay. Mr. Sicario, have you played Detroit Become Human? I have not. Oh, wise guy, see? You have been hammered. Okay. Is Detroit Become Human good? I've heard a lot about it, but I don't think it's out on PC yet. When it comes out to... Which podcast was that? That was Chapo Trap House. It was the most recent one that came out, like, a few hours ago. Okay. Cryptosporidium. Cryptosporidium, that's a mushroom? Okay. What do you think of the new Smash Brothers? I haven't seen anything about the new Smash Brothers. The last Super Smash Brothers I think I played was the original one. Is Kirby still in it? If Kirby's still in it, I'm happy. You've heard that it is not good. Okay. Argos Panoptes wants to know thoughts on Daddy George Soros. Honest thought or troll thought? Because, like, troll thought is like, you know, he pays my bills, so, you know, nothing wrong with that. Reality, he reminds me a lot of... He reminds me a lot of, like, Warren Buffett, this, like, person, this, like, billionaire that people worship because he sometimes gives to, like, okay causes, but for the most part is just, like, a, like, horrible neoliberal. So, I don't know. I don't really think that much about George Soros, beyond the, like, huge, like, weave of conspiracy theory that has been made by the reactionary right to talk about him. I honestly, I know he's a Hungarian person who set up a bunch of, like, things in the in Eastern Europe in order to sort of elevate Eastern Europe after the collapse of the Soviet Union out of like the depression that it got in the early '90s. Set up a bunch of schools and stuff like that, but honestly, like that's I don't really know too much past that. Okay. Why is it that the Canadian side of Niagara Falls is much more developed than the U.S. side? I live in WNY, Buffalo to be exact, and I never knew why we had such a much more rundown falls. Well, Cola Nerd 10. So Cola Nerd 10. I think the reason is because America's got a lot more competition for stuff to go to. In New York State, you have, for example, New York, but even in America, like you got like Las Vegas and stuff. Like we don't have all that many attractions, and so we make the most out of. We try to make the most out of Niagara Falls as possible. And other thing is that the Canadian side of Niagara Falls is much prettier. We got the like really nice part of Niagara Falls, and so it's an easier thing to like make a tourist trap out of. All right, Dan Pike. Is that your primary filming camera behind you? This thing? Yes, it is. What sort of camera is it, and what is your setup for filming live videos? Mostly just camera and mic clip, or something more involved? All right, so that's a good question. So that is my camera. I got this camera. So, okay, first of all, this tripod here was Amazon tripod, and it was like $15. It was super easy to get. I bought this like a long time ago. This camera, which I am slowly trying to unscrew for you. This camera is a Canon Vixia HF R800. It's a small camcorder. I bought this to start Quickstep, and I bought it with money that I got from John Green and Hank Green through a grant they give out for educational YouTubers. So they sent me the money so that I could buy this, and also so I could buy a subscription to a stock video website. And this camera I've been using, and I like it a lot. It's pretty. It films in 1920 by 1080, which is good enough for me, and the footage looks pretty good. I don't have a whole lot of technical expertise, so it takes care of a lot of the more complicated stuff for me. It's not like I mean I might move to a more fancy camera in the future, but I don't have the money for that right now. You know, Patreon and Super Chats and AdSense combined still only get you so far, and I still only work part-time, so I'm saving up my pennies. I put aside 5% of all the money I make to buy equipment, but it's gonna be some time. Good night, 255 AD. Good night, Cryptosporidium. Thank you very much for the kind words. Yeah, so that's what I film with. And also, I don't think I can show you. Well, maybe I can show you a bit, but this might hurt your ears, so I'll be really careful. But this is a Blue Yeti, and this is what I film with. And I have an extender on the USB cord, so that when I go to film back there, I just bring it over there, and then I just set it up in front of me while I film. And so, you know, that's the thing. Okay. Thank you. I'm gonna put the camera. I'm gonna put the mic over here now. Okay. So, it's a Blue Yeti. It is honestly, if anyone's thinking of getting into making stuff on YouTube, the Blue Yeti is the greatest first investment you can make. It's about $125. It's a USB microphone. It sounds okay. It's about the best. If you were to take like a graph and put like the quality and the price, this would be the best bang for your buck, and it's a great way to get started. You should probably, if you start and you start like making some money off of your stuff, you should move to higher quality content. Like I probably should have a long time ago, but I don't have any money, so I'm working on it. Someday I will try to apply for maybe another grant or something to get some better equipment. But yeah, that's where you should get started. It's more important than a camera or anything is to have good audio. Okay. Isaac Royan, undergrad history student, doing a new course on Empire, and I was wondering if there are any noteworthy African perspectives on the scramble for Africa and not Lenin, Cecil Rhodes et al. I am not an expert on the scramble for Africa. I am a U.S. historian of post-1871 era as my area of expertise and focus. So I don't really get to talk too much about. I don't really know too much about the scramble for Africa, at least in the sense of like recommending books for like a course. So sorry about that. Okay. Jenga Tree 121 wants to know, how are your kitties? My kitties are great. One of them was here just a moment ago. I'm not going to go up and get them, but they're fine. They do cat things. I feed them. They sleep in sunlight, and sometimes they cuddle. They're both pretty nice cats. One of them is going to turn 10 soon, which is like, I don't even know what we should do. So yeah, we don't have mixed under reverse representation. Okay, Lever Detected wants to know if I have any producers. No. Step Back is a one-person operation. My wife helps out a little bit with me bouncing ideas off of her, but like, for the most part, there's a serious delay on YouTube versus Twitch. I would not be surprised because this is going through like OBS into something called Restream.io, which is sending it out to the two platforms. So it is what it is. But do I have any producers? No. Step Back is basically 100% me. There's I have like some of the art, like this art here. Like that was commissioned by Nick Nimmin over at, I think it's called Tuber Tools or something like that. That art was made by people. The end screen and the little, like, if you watch my videos, the little lower third thing that shows my Twitter information, that was all commissioned from Tuber Tools. The other thing is that the Step Back theme song is made by Corey, who runs the channel 12 Tone. So I didn't write the theme song. But as far as like research, writing, shooting, editing, and uploading and metadata and social media, that's all me. How do you get ideas for new show formats? It's following what's interesting, what I want to make, and what's popular. Quick Step, I started, like, I had strategy ideas for these things. So, like, alright, so when I got started, So Step Back itself is its own thing. That's what I basically started with, these explainer videos. Quick Step I started because I thought, after going to VidCon 2017, the idea came into my mind that I needed to make some sort of more vloggy content, and I originally made like a short-lived project called Historian IRL, but I realized that that was splitting my audience, and I really didn't like the idea. It didn't really work out the way that I wanted to, and I was putting energy into projects that was basically going nowhere. So I scrapped it. Fail fast, as they say. And I also started Quick Step as a way to capitalize on the fact that they were saying that your channel gets promoted more if you make more content, and I was trying to get stuff that would not reach the typical audience, because I found that the typical history audience on YouTube is fairly right-wing, and so they were kind of bouncing off my channel, and so I was trying to think about how to get people into Step Back, and I was trying to like reach out to new people who might not necessarily be interested in history, but they could become interested in history. And so I was trying to make a series that was going to talk about like topical things in the news, in order to sort of bring more search traffic in. But it didn't turn out that way. As I had made Quick Step ended up becoming this thing that really was more community content. It was more something that only my subscribers were watching. And the thing that was bringing in search traffic were more like these evergreen videos. Like, for example, my video on Sikhism has converted tons of subscribers. My video on the 9/11 Truther movement has brought in tons of subscribers. And like, it's those things that's really the way that I was getting search traffic. And so I was like, okay, well, if this is just community stuff, then I should make it into something that's a little bit more community focused, like a like now. And so I can see all of you guys. The chat looks like it's stopped. I hope I haven't like bored you all. So I stopped the series just because it wasn't doing what I wanted to do, and on top of that, it was splitting the type of content that Step Back was putting out. I was half doing current events, so I was like half like this hot take machine, and half like doing Step Back videos, and doing 2 videos a week meant that both of them suffered, and there were people who were subscribing for one and not the other, and on top of that, it was just so it just didn't work. It just wasn't a smart decision, especially for community content, because I think that these streams are way better than and so I decided what I was going to do is retire the Quick Step series and put more energy on the Step Back main videos. And the first one that I did after I made this change was part 2 of the Al-Qaeda series. So the Al-Qaeda part 2, the Rwanda video, and part 3 and 4 of the Al-Qaeda series are the ones where I'm going to put more energy into this. So you can tell me whether or not that actually worked as far as like the quality going up quite a bit. And on top of that, let me just drink some more water. On top of that, it lets me focus on my job, my civil liberties work. And hopefully the focus on these videos will result in higher polish and better stuff. The other thing, too, is that I decided to take to cover the 3 things. Like when you go to like YouTube school, they tell you to make videos, hero, hub, and help content. Hub content is supposed to be like stuff you do with your audience. So like this is like this stream. This stream is my hub content. This is me hanging out with you guys, answering questions, being a person, and like, you know, doing that. Second is is help content, which is content that's designed to bring in new people and bring in search traffic, and that's what like the weekly step back videos are supposed to be. And then hero content is supposed to be bigger content that you're supposed to like actually invest in and put money into and try to like make an event around. And that is basically that's something that I'm working on. I have plans to work on that. And I'm working on one in the background right now where I'm going to get a whole lot of collaborators. I have like professors I'm going to interview. It's going to be like an actual like documentary. I'm going to try to make a couple of those a year. So that's the way that like Step Back is working in my head right now. So you're selling authenticity in a way. I'd like to like a lot of this stuff is about like trying to appear authentic, but I try to actually be authentic as long as I can. Like I have 40,000 subscribers at the moment. Just passed that last week. Yay! There are 3 of you on Twitch. There are 40 of you in the chat right now, and I'm hoping that all of you feel like I have a reasonable you have a reasonable chance of asking me a question and I can get back to you. Like I'm still a small enough YouTuber that I can still answer every comment, talk to my viewers, and feel like I have that accessibility. And I feel like that's going to get that's going to get harder as time moves on. But I want to do it as long as I can, because I really don't want to lie to people and make them feel like they have a relationship with me that they don't. It's inevitably going to happen because that's how we do things. But I'm going to try to be responsible about it anyway. Because I don't want to lie to people. Okay. As for like video ideas, I think somebody asked that a little further down, so we'll get into that in a second. Glitch42, what do you think of the ACLU and the internal fight it's having over free speech? I think they sorted that one out pretty much, didn't they? That they were basically like, yeah, let's not support hate speech anymore because of how bad Charlottesville was. And like the other thing too is like as I noticed that as Step Back grows, I am getting slight amount of internet celebrity. Like I ended up getting recognized on the street randomly last month, and I know that happens every once in a while to YouTubers, and so like I know that this is a thing that's building and it's going to get bigger and not lesser, and so I have to really think about it. So it's on my mind quite a bit. Terry Weaver, I like that you try to engage, even though I don't agree with you. You don't agree with me that I engage with people? I'm sorry. But I think that so on the ACLU, I thought they turned around. Luckily, the Canadian Constitution with the Equal Rights Protection Clause means that the Canadian version of the ACLU, the CCLA, which is what I work for, does not protect hate speech. And I am perfectly cool with that. Yeah. Pirate the Creator, are you okay with transgender people? Yes. I didn't even know that would be a question. Yes, I am very close to some trans people. Trans people are people, and they are, they are no different from any other person. Oh, you were the Steven Pinker guy. Okay. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. Jenga Tree 121. Let me just mute my computer since you don't need to hear that. Um, oh, Stormy Candles, why you do this? Go away. Just 1 second, I just gotta do a thing. Bye! Okay, there we go. Okay, but yeah, trans people are people, they're, I don't know, they're just like normal. There's lots of people who are fairly close to me that are trans. I care a lot about trans issues because of how many trans people in my life. I've seen the pain they go through firsthand. I guess secondhand, but I don't know. I don't really, I don't know. I think that I don't think the question. I don't think my thing can really go anywhere from there. I think I'm gonna need to moderate some after we do a few episodes. I'll see who's a regular. Maybe I can get a few deputize a few people. Okay. I feel like you have too many platforms, though. You've got Reddit, Discord, Slack, and others too, I believe. Yeah, I do put effort into some and not others. The subreddit for Step Back is kind of empty. The Slack for Step Back is also kind of empty. But the Discord is really active, and if you guys aren't a member of the Discord, I'm going to, if you guys haven't yet, and you want to join the Step Back Discord server, it's actually really good. Let me just get y'all a link. So here, you guys can join the Discord server. If you guys haven't been members yet, it's been really fun, and the community there has been really great. So I definitely want to see if I can rope in a few more people. But yeah, the Discord is definitely where I am a lot, and then on Twitter. Like, those are the two places where the most Step Back. I have other platforms, but I don't check them all that much. Okay. $40,000 subscribers and videos criticizing the right. Yeah, you need mods. Okay. Jenga Tree 121. If you could move to any planet, which would you pick? You'll be provided with all the equipment and technology to survive. You just got to pick which one. I assume Earth is off bounds, because that would just be cheating. Discord is free, and I'm on it. I have it running on my phone. I basically look at it every once in a while. And trust me, if I'm there quite a bit. So if you ask me a question and you like at me on the Discord, I'll probably get back to you. So if I could move to any planet that I had all the things to survive, where would I go? And that is a really neat question. I think that the most fun place to go in the solar system, a planet, I want to say Mercury, because Mercury is tidally locked, and so you can you've got that big difference between sunlight and nighttime, and so you could basically move to wherever on the planet, whatever time of day you feel like. You can go to the side that's perpetually daytime, or the side that, if I were a bigot who made up history, I would have mods too. Let's get rid of that person. All right. Yeah, if I was so Mercury, you've got your perpetual twilight, your nighttime, your daytime. Sunlight area is a pretty good place for setting up tons and tons of solar panels and stuff like that. And yeah. So yeah, give me Mercury. Because I was thinking Venus, you wouldn't be able to see the stars. That kind of sucks. Mars, it's all red. You really can't see the sky that well either. Um, like Jupiter, once you get like past Mars, they're all gas giants, and so you're like living in like clouds. Um, so like, I mean, that'd be kind of cool, but you wouldn't see a whole lot. So there you go. All right. Okay, this person with a whole bunch of Cyrillic letters in their name, and so. Okay. Jupiter does have some cool moons. Yeah, if there was like moons, like if I could move to like Europa or something, I would go there because I would love to see. I would love for Europa to be. I'd love to, if I like could live in anything, I'd go there and see if I could find out if there's life there because it's like one of the best candidates for life. Okay, so this person whose name is a bunch of Cyrillic letters, I'm not going to even try. Hello, I am from Ukraine, but I live in Winnipeg since 2011. I occasionally read Canadian news, but I feel like I don't really understand Canadian society and its issues. Could you please talk about Canada more? Aw. I feel like I fished for that one, but thank you. Canada's a very strange country. I don't have anything I can really specifically talk about, but... See, Jenga Tree, I would choose Pluto, but Pluto is not a planet. It is a dwarf planet. But Canadian, you know... Canada's an interesting country, and I should talk about it more. Christian Vibrecht, I saw that you commented on a Warcraft video made by Bellular, and then asked Tristan Johnson, or Mr. Johnson, have you ever played World of Warcraft? Shit, man, I played World of Warcraft today. I was doing it right before I came out here. Yeah, I had played a lot when I was younger. I gave it up for about, I don't know, 8 years or so, and I just got back into it recently. So, yeah, it's a really good game for... like kind of like checking out, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, and still having something to do. It's a great game to chill out to. And I need that because between my like 3 jobs, sometimes I just need like an hour to just like chill, you know, and doing some world quests or something is really nice. But that video I was talking about was about Baron Samedi, because it was a whole thing about how the World of Warcraft expansion that just came out has a lot of stuff to do with voodoo, and I had a video on voodoo, and so I decided to talk about, like, give the learning opportunity and talk about it. Michael Kirshner, who's another patron. Thank you very much, Michael Kirshner, for that. What is an appropriate response to the phrase "Europe is lost" or "X white country is lost"? Well, first of all, it's not really a person that you should talk to. If they're going that hyperbolic, and it means that they're not super relevant anyway, or at least they're not really somebody who's worth your time. But if someone was like literally concerned about these kinds of things, you have to point out things like Europe has never really been belonged to any skin color. Humans didn't evolve in Europe. All humans are immigrants from Africa, and white skin was a slow development. On top of that, there have been non-white people living in Europe for pretty much any given time in European history. Just like, look at how southern Spain was ruled by the Moors, or the Umayyad Caliphate for like 700 years. And also, like, Rome was a multi-ethnic empire that had people from all over the Middle East and North Africa, and as well as the Mediterranean, all over Europe. And there's, like, you know, stories of a Black Knight in I want to say, is it English folklore or like French folklore, about this like Black Knight who turned out to be real and turned out to be black. So like this is hardly a thing. Like, to think that like Europe lived in some sort of all white bubble um, is dumb. Like there, we didn't like there like Europe did not exist independent. It like was in a constant state of interaction and movement and change with the rest of the world for all of human history. So like, no, like you can't lose what you never had in the first place. Do we have another? You watched the Sean video, didn't you? Well, I did watch that Sean video, and it's really good. So if you want like a better description of what I'm saying, you should go watch the Sean video. But most of that stuff I knew already. Oh gosh. Okay, there's a troll in the chat. I don't even know what to do with them. Okay. So suppose the U.S. had totally open borders. How would that affect the low-income people who already live there? If the U.S. had totally open borders, like with any country, or just if anybody could come in and out of the United States. So those are two very different questions. Like if we just had open borders, period, things would get a lot better because you could, because labor could move wherever money was. Like the whole idea right now with the way that globalization sort of happened, the way that globalization sort of went through is this is that like capital, like the bourgeoisie can go anywhere they want and invest money wherever they want, and they can build companies wherever they want, which is like a race to the bottom. But people can't do the same. If people could do the same, then that equation changes quite a bit. Not perfectly, but it gets better. Anyways, so that's where. But if anybody could move in, well, and you still have the same laws about like emigration, I don't honestly care. Like, I think that the result would not be that different. There would be some people, like the biggest change would be people who wanted to move to America, who had the means to, would be able to. And the people who brought their like people who have immigrated who can't get their families to come over, they have like people who have like there'd be a lot more people bringing their families to the United States, which would be nice. As far as what it would do for low-income people, well, there's not going to be jobs for low-income people one way or the other. We had to ban somebody from our Discord very early on in the server's history because we had a person who was trying to make like a left-wing argument for basically like banning immigration, and it was a really like not good argument because basically like this like joblessness is coming for everybody, and the reason why you have things like if you had like unlimited immigration and citizenship rights, if anything, it would be better in the sense that people wouldn't be able to hire slave labor. So I don't know. That's the way it goes. Pirate the Creator, can you explain galvanism? I can't explain galvanism. I have no idea what that is. Glitch42, what's your favorite alcoholic drink? Now, here we're getting to the real good questions. My favorite alcoholic drink is beer. I pretty much exclusively drink beer and wine. I don't really drink hard liquor anymore. I got really, really, really drunk in 2013 to the point where like I lost memories and stuff. And yeah, I don't want to do that again. I felt really bad afterwards, and basically now I just drink beer. I really like really hoppy IPAs. I really like I really like IPAs. I like Gruit. I like cider. I like Shandy and Radler, but I also really like red wine. But I'd probably say out of all of them, my favorite is IPAs. I drank on my wedding night where we had an open bar. I got to drink like just IPAs all night. It was a joy. It was the second best thing that happened to me that day. Is Thought Slime as cool as he seems in real life? Yes. Thought Slime on camera is very similar to how he is in the real world. He's a pretty good friend of mine by now, and he's very funny, and he's a goofball in all the best ways. The only difference between Thought Slime in real life and Thought Slime on YouTube is that I get to talk to him about everything and not just like politics and stuff. Although we talk about that a lot, but we get to talk about like movies and video games and all those kinds of things. I lost memory. You don't say. It sounds like you have a drinking problem. It was like one party when I had like just moved to the city that I'd moved to, so like I don't know. I had a friend when I lived in London that was kind of crazy, and I kind of just rolled with it because I had just moved to London and I was getting to know everybody, and things went crazy. But I don't do that no more. But yeah, Thought Slime is a great person and a great YouTuber, and you should go to Thought Slime. You should go to the Thought Slime YouTube channel because you will enjoy it. Okay. 255 AD, do you think it's possible for a society to industrialize without going through massive amounts of exploitation? Ours involved. That's a good question. It seems like it's almost like an errant law of nature in a sense, right? Because like you industrialize and kind of the capitalist system comes out of that. But I could see ways of getting around that, but it'd be difficult, obviously, or at least difficult in the context we have now. I think it's. You asked if it's possible. I think it is possible, which I wouldn't have said too long ago. So. Getting blackout drunk once, not a drinking problem. Getting blackout drunk every night for 10 years, my drinking problem. Oh my, okay. There are 1,000 different types of beer. What kind of beer do you drink? It's IPAs. Good old bitter-ass IPAs.
Hi, folks.
Hello. Oh. Oh my. All right. Yeah, as far as like getting blackout drunk, I have done that in my life twice, ever. Which I think, and both like once was like in 2013, so like 5 years ago, and the other time I think was like in I want to say 2012. So basically like when I was like 23, 24, which is like when you're supposed to do that stuff anyway. All right, how did you get started making educational YouTube videos? That's a good question, Lever Detected. That was my wife, Kelly. Okay. Anyways, how did I get started? So I actually started on YouTube in 2007. In February 2007, I made a YouTube channel a long time ago. I made a YouTube channel when I was, I guess 2007, I would have been 18, 19, I would have been 18. It was a channel called Tristan PEJ, which there's still videos on there, but they have mostly been, I deleted most of them. So there's really not much to see there. But that was where I started, and I was part of the new atheist YouTube, like in 2007, 2008 time, where like it was all video responses and stuff like that. And so that's where it went. That's where it goes. Like I did that, and I was doing that off and on forever until my wonderful partner kind of sat me down and said, "You really should stop making these videos." And so I did. I shut down that channel, and I decided if I was going to come back to YouTube, I was going to come back intentionally and with some sort of plan involved. And so I managed to talk to people. I managed to talk to Cody on Skype that one time, where he gave me a bunch of advice on how to make videos. And then I read 30 Days to a Better YouTube Channel, and I started from scratch. Like I tried really hard and got started. In September, actually, 3 days ago, it was 3 years. 3 years ago. So now I'm at 3 years. Yep. So that's how I got started. All right. Pirate the Creator. Did Canada really win the War of 1812? All my Canadian friends pissed me off by saying they won. That is actually an interesting question. It's kind of, but also kind of not. So first of all, Canada did win in the fact that they were the defensive side of a war where the plan was to conquer Canada. So the U.S. did try to invade Canada and take it over, and they didn't do that, which, I mean, you can consider that a victory. But there's more kind of complicated geopolitical reasons for why that happened. After the American Revolution, the British still acted as if the Americans were a colony. They were doing things like basically like running foreign policy as if the United States had never left. They started doing things like impressing soldiers, or impressing sailors, where they would capture American sailors and force them into the British Navy. They were also in a sort of Cold War with the United States, where they were giving weapons and supplies to indigenous groups on the American frontier to make the U.S. Harder to expand into indigenous territory. And also we were like thumbing our nose, like whenever like slaves escaped America into Canada, it would create a diplomatic incident, and we would refuse to get involved. So, or we would keep them from taking that slave back. And so the Americans were mad, and they were expanding in all directions at that point. So they thought, hey, let's like invade Canada and like grab some territory, especially because in 1812 as well, the British were busy with fighting Napoleon. So they thought, okay, well, the British are like occupied with fighting Napoleon. We could like invade Canada, which wasn't all that like occupied. There wasn't that many people there at that time. Take their land, and just that's it. Like easy, quick war. But Canada, like the Canadian troops, like the Canadian Home Guard, basically managed to fend off the Americans for 2 years. And then when the British were able to enforce in full, we made an offensive. We marched down to Washington. We basically like just wrecked Washington and signed a peace agreement. And I will say that in that wrecking of Washington, a lot of British soldiers and a lot of Canadian soldiers, Canada was a British colony at that time, but like people, like I'm talking about like soldiers from Britain or soldiers from Canada, they wrecked a lot of priceless books and priceless artifacts and things like that, which I don't like. And they signed the peace treaty, and basically as part of the peace treaty, the U.S. said they're not going to invade Canada anymore. We're going to work out like the revolution was not half over because they didn't take Canada. This is the line. No more. Canada is a thing that you have to acknowledge exists. You can't go into that region. and on top of that, the British agreed to not impress soldiers anymore, and they agreed to stop with the funding of the indigenous soldiers, and so you could say it was sort of a back and forth. So it's kind of like I guess like the way to describe it in like paradox terms would be a white peace. But the thing is, Canadians always say they won because there's Canadian nationalist rhetoric that likes to point that out. When the War of 1812 was going through its bicentennial, the conservative government here made a really big, like, nationalist ideal about it, and it was all just ridiculous and jingoistic, and unfortunately it rubbed off on a lot of people. Jingachu 121, how is Thought Slime? He's alright. Okay, Pirate the Creator, is Blue Yeti good for recording music too? I think so. It's the best microphone you're going to get for the price that you're going to pay. Like, unless you want to invest in like an analog to digital converter and spend a lot more money, this is about the best you're going to get. You can't, like, for a USB mic, you're good. But if you're like a serious audiophile, you're going to want to spend a little bit more money. But then you're getting into like $500 or $600 or $700 worth of equipment. But a Blue Yeti, you can get started for $125, which is great if you're just experimenting with stuff. So what are we doing on this stream? I guess I'm answering questions for a bunch of hours. I'm going to try to I'm going to shake it up and do some interesting other things as well. If you have any recommendations as to like segments I should do on this show, or how I should organize things, or what kind of things you want to see, please let me know. You can either do a message in the Discord, or do a message in, like, I don't know, the Twitch chat or the YouTube chat or whatever. Just like send me a message and see where it goes. Or Twitter. I'm a pretty easy person to get a hold of if you really want to, so if you have ideas, please, I like to hear them. DQuack wants to know, what do you think about a series about the different types of measurement, like the old French, Spanish, Russian, and explaining them? It's a series I thought about doing next year. Well, if you plan on doing it, then go for it. I think it'd be interesting to a very specific type of person. You'd have to find a way to tell a compelling story about these measurement systems, instead of just saying what they were and how they worked, because I think the video that just like describes these different measurement systems would actually be kind of dry and boring. But if you were to find a way to talk about how this is important and how this reflects like how technology develops and what standardization means, all these kinds of things, I think that if you can tell that story in a bigger narrative, I think that you could have a very compelling video out of it. And I promise not to steal it. Are you banned from Twitter? How did you do that? Did you get mad at Nazis? Because Twitter loves Nazis. And if you attacked a Nazi, they probably came to their defense. Because that's how Jack work. Oh my. Yeah, Jacob, don't share racist memes, please. There's a rule. We don't even allow ironic racism on the Discord, so please don't. Okay. We should do a Mad Lib together. Oh man. You should do more on obscure religions like you did with Zoroastrianism and Rastafarianism. Well, Alistair Daniel, we actually have a... you should stay tuned for not this week's video, but next week's video. Also, while I have you guys, while I have your attention, while I have you people's this attention, I do have something I should want to show you. So I have a page, I have a web page now, where if you want to submit an idea to Step Back, to make a Step Back video, or upvote videos that you want to see happen, I have like this page, and what you can do on this page is you can either write down a video idea and put it up there, or and on top of that you can upvote other people's ideas to push them higher up. And I'm kind of using that. So here, here you go, folks. I know, yeah, Ron is already on the thing, but you guys can check that out. It's a great way to do it. If you have just like a random idea that you want to see a Step Back video about, it's a great place to do it. And be sure to upvote other people's ideas, because there's a lot of really good ones there, and I'd love to kind of crowdsource what people think are going to be successful. But as you can see, the first one there is about the Yazidis, so that's going to be next week's video subject. Okay. Argos Panoptes, do you play Minecraft? Well, yes. Yes, I do. And I do hear that there is the beginnings of a Step Back History Discord server, Minecraft server, that's getting set up. And that means I'm probably going to reinstall it at some point, because I played... most of the time I spent playing Minecraft was back in beta, in like 2011. And I think that I have a lot of catching up to do, but I think I will play I think that I'll join in with the Minecraft server. I think I'd love to see what a bunch of you wacky history fans will come up with on that server. Well, thank you very much, Ron. So could I suggest, so I could suggest 20th century memeing in the style of the channel 18th century cooking. That'd be fun. Yeah, alright. Ian Lees, does YouTube qualify for Canadian media / content grants? I don't think anyone's applied for them, but I've been told through the grapevine that some Canadian YouTubers have been able to ask for Canadian media and Canadian content grants and have gotten something out of it. So it's something I should do. I should really be more on the ball about applying for grants. I just don't really know how to do it. I don't really know how to find grants or how to apply for them or anything. But it's something I should do, because there are a lot of grants for artists, and especially people who make educational media in Canada. So I have a question. Is there an alternative to Minecraft that wasn't made by a quasi-fascist shitweasel? Nope. Just be glad that he doesn't own it anymore. That it now belongs to the wonderful hands of Microsoft. In my case, I bought Minecraft back in 2011, before he kind of came out as a Nazi, so I guess hopefully I can plead ignorance. Thoughts on PhilosophyTube and binging his content all day? Oh, Ollie's great. Ollie and I hung out at VidCon, and we did a stream together back in July, and it was really great. Him and I DM each other on Twitter about stuff. Like, yeah, he's great. You are in for a treat. There is a lot of PhilosophyTube to chew through, and it's all really good. Honestly, though, like, Nightwatcher's Pet, if you didn't want to deal with, like, if you didn't want to buy indie video games from, like, sexists and racists, you're actually quite limited. RimWorld, you can't. RimWorld is actually the guy who makes that. Tynan Sylvester is also kind of a shitweasel, as Ron said. Notch did, yeah. Notch sold. He sold Minecraft to Microsoft. Wait, Notch is a Nazi. Do explain. Basically, Notch was Notch on Twitter just started becoming super fascist and racist and shit. Basically, the same thing happened to Notch on Twitter that happened to J.K. Rowling on Twitter, which is that when you found out that they are a person on Twitter, you get way too much access, and you basically find out that they have horrible opinions. RimWorld 2, Tynan Sylvester, like, certified sexist. Yes. Okay, so I'm very sorry about Notch. Shitweasel feels like what, like Shakespeare. It feels like a modern day Shakespearean insult. Yeah. But I don't know. Does the fact that J.K. Rowling is a TERF, does that ruin Harry Potter for you? And would you buy Harry Potter today, knowing that it enriches somebody who is a trans-exclusive radical feminist? That's a question that's completely up to you, and I think that's one we're all going to struggle with, because if you don't buy artistic creations that are by somebody who's problematic, you're limited to very few things. He came out pro-Gamergate, then pro-Trump. Yeah, there you go. 255 AD. Yeah, basically Gamergate was like the overturning of the stones, where you found out where all of the who all the terrible game devs were. Is this your new Step Back stream, Michael Collins? Yes, it is. That is exactly. Yeah, so Ian Lee's, so J.K. Rowling has had problematic opinions ever since she decided to get a Twitter account. She's, like, gone on and said things like, anytime that anybody has come around to, now that Harry Potter is getting older, people are kind of coming around to, like, critically assessing the literature and talking about things like trans representation and how, like, and LGBTQ plus representation in general in that book. And people pointed out that, like, yeah, there's this whole thing about Dumbledore being gay, but, like, it was really, like, danced around and not given much attention to. And so, like, it wasn't, like, that much of a breakthrough. But then J.K. Rowling got, like, really mad about that and then started saying things that, like, Lupin was trans. And then, like, all these things that's like, okay, like, you wrote a book, like, you know, 13, 14 years ago. Like, it's okay that you had problematic aspects to it. But then she also started saying things that, like, that Harry Potter would have supported Israel, and then what people have started finding is, as they started researching more, that she very often on Twitter, like, hearts, like, TERF tweets. Jacob Rodriguez, is this going to be a regular thing, like a scheduled stream, or is it kind of on and off? My plan is to do it every Tuesday night. So, there you go. This is going to be regular. This is going to be a show. Hopefully, I'll find some more content to just, like, that's easier on my throat than just, like, talking at you guys for 3 straight hours. So, we'll see where that goes. Oh, man. Was Hermione really a lesbian? Well, I mean, no. She, like, got married and had kids at the end of the series. Yep. She got married to Ron Weasley and had kids, I should say. Okay, so suppose you're dead and going to be reincarnated as a baby in the year AD 1000. What part of the Earth do you want to be born in? Oh boy. The Middle East. I would probably want to be born in, like, if I were to be born in a place of relative privilege, or even if I wasn't, I would imagine a place like Mecca would be a pretty good place to live. It'd be easy, it'd be, at least I could do something like, I could do like a scholar, I could become a scholar or something. I don't know. I feel like the Middle East would probably be the best place to live in the year AD 1000. I am very sorry, pseudo account. This is why, if you truly love a artist or a game developer or any sort of creator, don't follow them on Twitter. On that note, follow me on Twitter. @TristanPEJ. I promise to try not to have opinions that will make you hate me. John Brock. Lesbians can do that before coming out. Yeah, I guess that's true. J.K. Rowling, I don't know if she's ever said anything about her coming out in an older time. So, it's up to her. But also, Hermione Granger is not a person who exists. She is a cultural construct, a character. She basically ceases to exist the second the books are over. And anything beyond that is, belongs to everybody, and you can imagine whatever you want because it's not written about. Ooh, yes. Baghdad would also be a great place to be reincarnated in year 1000. I do think that, in year 1000, the pinnacle of development and civilization in the world would be in the Middle East. So I'd probably want to live there. At least Kojima is cool. I guess the Japanese game devs kind of did the Japanese game developers ever deal with Gamergate, or did they take the smart road and just not even address it? Which I imagine is what they did. Yeah. Don't worry, pseudo account. I'm trying to get to as many questions as possible. I'm very backed up. I'm trying to get stuff. I'm just getting distracted and everything. Arcos Panotes, why are most history viewers right-wingers? Well, because history is taught in schools with a very nationalist focus to it. And so the people who consider themselves history buffs in school tend to be fairly right-wing. And so... except when they go to grad school, because when you go to grad school, that shit hits you like a ton of bricks. Not always. You still have your Niall Fergusons out there, but, whatever. So, very often, the people who would like history that are not right-wing think they don't like history. And the people who like history and know they like history, in general, tend to have more right-wing opinions because they gravitated towards the glorification of the far right in World War II, or things like nationalist, national narratives and things like that. The history that I teach is fairly anti-nationalist, which means that the people who are on YouTube looking for history content tend to be disappointed when they find my channel, and then the people who would like my content wouldn't even know because they don't really think they like history. But they would if they just knew that it doesn't have to be like that. Okay. Okay, Jacob Rodriguez. What do you think was one of the most defining events in American history? Bacon's Rebellion. It happened in the 1600s. Well, Lever Detective, you had good history teachers. The most defining event in American history of Bacon's Rebellion, it was a period in which, while slavery, the purchasing of African slaves was a thing that happened, they were still dwarfed by indentured servants who came on these contracts basically with the promise that they would be able to get land and start their own farms after they did a period of work in order to pay off their debt. But they weren't given that promised land very often. And so Bacon, Nathaniel Bacon, who actually died before the rebellion started, sort of sparked this rebellion that was very damaging in Virginia. And after the rebellion was over, Virginia switched from relying on indentured servants to very heavily relying on slave labor, and that is the the defining moment when what would become the United States became heavily dependent on African slavery as a as the economic mode of production. So I would say that's the most important event in American history. What are your plans for Halloween? Do you have any costume or video ideas? I don't have any video ideas yet. I should think of some. I have the only October video I think I have like set in stone is a video for when marijuana becomes legal, but I haven't thought of a Halloween video. I have lots of Halloween video ideas. I just haven't decided which one I'm going to do yet. But I do have some. As for costumes, I don't know. I haven't been invited to a Halloween party yet. I don't anticipate I will be. I don't know any situation in which I'm going to need a costume, so I'm probably not going to get one. I mean, even, like, I live in an apartment building. Like, we don't even get kids who come for candy, so, like, there's no point. Doesn't the video game Hitman look like Davis Arini? Actually, yes. I said that, I think it was, like, H-Bomber Guy was streaming him playing Hitman, and I was just like, why are you playing this Davis Arini simulator? Okay, do you think it's possible for a site to industrialize without going through the mass amounts of... Oh, we already answered that question. Sorry. I'm getting so slow that people are thinking I didn't get to their question and asking it again. I'm very sorry about that. What's the difference between the U.S. and Canadian free speech? The main thing that is the difference is in Canada we have something called the Equal Protection Clause, which means that you can't basically say under protected groups like you basically can't publicly call for the or dehumanize people based on their race, ethnicity, class, gender identity, or sexual orientation. And so basically hate speech is illegal in Canada, which has done a lot because it means that, like, neo-Nazis can't publish their books and they really can't organize. And so, like, neo-Nazi groups have had trouble getting themselves together here and organizing in a meaningful way in Canada, which is, you know, that's a thing. Okay. What's your opinion on fat shaming? You know, it's never great to make anybody feel like shit for anything about who they are or what they look like or anything like that. The only person who should be telling somebody how their body should, like, what their body weight should be is a doctor. And if you're not a doctor, you don't know enough about that person to make any sort of claim, and very often you're just using it as an excuse to bully people. You know. And even some doctors can be a dick about it, but that's a different fight altogether. But for the most part, like, yeah. Don't, like, don't, like, judge other people for their, you know, health choices if you're not their physician. Otherwise you're being a jerk. Hey, do you mind if I maybe... Noah Cook. The cooking gamer? Okay. Do you mind if you what? I don't know. DQuack, what clubs did you do in school? This Thursday I'm going to a Skype club where we talk to other schools. That's interesting. I did not know that was a thing. Cool. Yeah, I would probably say that when I was in school, so when I was in high school, I was on the chess team, or chess club. There wasn't really a team. I did notice that I never really learned. First of all, the chess team was basically a board game club. On top of that, I never really got any good at chess. I just liked hanging out with the people who were there. And so I think I'm the only person who finished the entire 2 years of going to that club without winning a single game. So, like, even to this day, I don't really know how to play chess. I know how the pieces move, but I don't know anything past that. Then And I was also in some like really dumb club in high school called like the Justice Mongers, which was like a social justice high school club. And this was like 2005, 2006. So like all we did was complain about George Bush. And we were Canadian, so we couldn't really do anything about it anyway. Jeez. So there was that, and then in undergrad, I was a member of the Gender Equity Center, so like the feminist club on campus. I was a member of the Bishop. Here's my alma mater. The Bishop's Pride Alliance, which was the LGBTQ plus club. I was a member of that. I was a member of. Well, I was a member of the History Association, which was like the undergrad history club, but I was president of it for a year. And then in my last year at that university, I was also part of the Academic Senate, which meant that I was part of like student government. And then when I was in grad school, I was part of the History Association there, which is more like a working organization for the history grad students. And I was a union steward, so I worked for the union. And I was and for a bit I ran the grad student radio show, in which we talked about grad students and their research once a week on the radio. So I did that for a few years as well. I think like about 3 years, almost 3 years. I was in the radio show. What was your first internet experience? I remember this because we got the internet a little bit later than most of my friends, and we started getting book club books, especially the Animorph books. And I remembered when my dad said he was going to get the internet, I started, like, anytime a website came up in, like, anything, I wrote it down on a list, and I was like, these are all the websites I'm going to check out when I get the internet. And I do remember Animorphs.com was definitely number one, and man, did that site disappoint. And that was probably, like, in 1996, so you could just imagine what it was like back then. What's your opinion on the American education system? It's kind of bad. Its funding coming from local taxes means that it's grotesquely uneven, and then on top of that, it relies a lot on standardized tests, which doesn't really result in effective education. And on top of that, they threaten to take away resources if they do poorly on the tests, which sounds like the opposite of what you should do. You should be helping the schools that are suffering, but it seems like it's mostly a system to punish teachers, which I don't understand. Don Trump 901. Oh boy. What do you think of the idea of a space force in relation to the full spectrum dominance doctrine, an expansion of the Wolfowitz system that the U.S. uses in a unipolar/unilateral global hegemony? Oh my goodness, that is like total, what's it called? That is total foreign policy jargon, like, everywhere. Alright, so, the full spectrum dominance doctrine is this idea that the United States should have, needs to not be a specialized thing like with the British and their Navy, and they need to have the best Army, and the best Navy, and the best Air Force in the world. All of them. Because if you don't excel at all of them all the time, then you can have an enemy get leverage over you by expanding to that area. So don't specialize. As far as space goes, I think space is still quite a ways away from being something that's going to be, like, actually important. I don't imagine Space Force is going to do much, even if it gets made, which I doubt it will. I feel like whatever president finishes, whatever president replaces Trump is not going to allow the Space Force to happen. If it in some miraculous world where there actually is a Space Force, it's probably going to be like taking over the duties of like like how the CIA has like spy satellites, and how there's ideas for like these like missile interception satellites, like the stupid Star Wars program that'll never work. So I imagine it's going to be focusing on those things, but like, no, there's not going to be like freaking space marines or anything like that. Like, that's dumb, and if that is the case, then they are going to waste a ton of money. And in the end, it's going to be what the American military was entirely designed for, which is to give handouts to giant corporations. Yeah, not to mention, as Noah Cook, the cooking gamer, pointed out on Twitch, that the U.S. Air Force, the Air Force literally is in charge of air and space. So really, it's taking away from the Air Force's work. I don't know. It seems to be building a lot of infrastructure on a military that is already overly complicated and bloated. Like, I'm not exactly sure where it's going to go. Yeah. Alright. What time is it? Oh my. It's already been 2 hours. Okay. So, I gotta answer these questions faster. You guys are asking so many good questions, though. Jacob Rodriguez. That's funny, because the next question from Jacob Rodriguez. What do you think of the American... What's your opinion of the budget of the United States? The budget of the United States is a disaster. They are such a rich country, but they are in such huge amounts of debt. And it's like, alright, like, all the morality aside about the United States trying to maintain a global empire for basically to force capitalism to keep going, the U.S. wastes a ton of their money on things. Like, they could balance their budget and still keep their global empire if they really wanted to. The U.S. spends tons of money because it believes in capitalism, and capitalism doesn't function unless it has a state flooding money into it in order to prop it up. Under its own weight, it would collapse. So the government needs to be giving tons of money to contractors in order to build tons and tons of weapons. It's how the U.S. economy basically runs, especially in places like the South. It needs to be constantly forking out dollars to various like consultant firms and research organizations. Like, the United States gives a ton of money to things, and I think this is like one of the main reasons why their healthcare is private, because a large segment of their economy is sustained only by the U.S. just giving them tons and tons and tons of money to private corporations at for-profit like things. And so, like, if the government like nationalized their healthcare system, it would save them tons of money, and it would be much more efficient and work a lot better, because it would function better than a system that's designed to make money and not heal people. And that would factor into a whole lot of things. Like, just nationalizing the healthcare system alone would put the U.S. on a budget surplus. Just healthcare. And that says a lot. The U.S. is wasting so much money because it is basically acting as the artificial life support for capitalism. Oh, man. And then, like, the things that they actually need, like schools and infrastructure and, like, roads and crap, they don't put money into. It's ugh. The priorities are so weird. Jenga Tree 121, who's your biggest man crush? Oh boy. I never thought of it, honestly. I guess Thought Slime. Thought Slime's my man crush. What do you think of Chapo Trap House? It's a funny show, but I very much feel like I am ashamed that I like that show. It's got some problematic aspects to it, but I still find it funny, and it is a very good cathartic show to get twice a week because I pay the $5 a month for it. But it's in this world where like every news organization is center to center right, when there's basically nobody that you can like just be a leftist around in your day-to-day life. Having something like Chapo Trap House where it's just a bunch of like funny people ragging on the news is very cathartic and therapeutic in a way, because you don't really get it anywhere else. It's good. Now I understand why so many people are centrists, because it's really nice when you just get to have even a moment where you're surrounded by people who agree with you on things. John Brockman, IPA was invented as so beer could survive the trip to India, as I understand. Yes! This actually is very relevant to the video that comes out on Thursday. Hops is, before like chemical preservatives, hops was an herb that, like, it is still an herb. But hops was used as a preservative in beer, so they added extra hops in order to make sure that it lasted the long trip from the British to India. Alfonso Oliver, why is I don't understand why Chapo Trap House is considered problematic. There's some other place like so. They use sometimes not so great language, and I'd be the first to say that. Also, on top of that, they are fairly, I guess, like, I'm trying to think what the right word would be. Sometimes they're not great about some ableist stuff. They do fat shaming, for example. They use the R word rather flippantly, not all the time, and I think they've cut back on that, but that is a thing that they do, or they have done. Some are better than others. Then there's the whole over thing with Amber Ailey Frost getting in a big tiffy with the DSA because she was really upset for some reason about the idea of getting sign language interpreters for some event, and like that stuff's not great. Like, I think that, like, they're imperfect people. They're imperfect leftists. Even, I think that, like, some of them are a little bit tanky for my taste, but still, it's just refreshing to even see people who are actual socialists to talk to and getting mad about the same things that I'm mad at, which is so rare today. Jenga Tree 121, most inspirational YouTube channel for you. Oh man, I'm inspired by people every day. I'm trying to think of like a YouTuber that sticks out right now as like one where like when I watch their stuff, it's like, oh man, I really want to make my stuff better right now in order to do that thing. I would probably say that. Alrighty, I would probably say that Ask a Mortician is a pretty good example of a YouTube channel that I find very inspirational, because like me, she's doing this similar thing where she has a cause that she wants to improve understanding about in the world and is being entertaining in order to do it. She has this sort of effortless charisma and this capacity for storytelling that I am very jealous of, and I wish I had the skills to do that. So every time a Ask a Mortician video comes out, I watch it and think about how I could even come close to what she's doing. John Brockman, which fellow YouTuber do you most want to cuddle with? Oh my goodness. I'll just say Thought Slime for all these questions. Thought Slime's easy person to say that to. Alright, Rex Lesser. Can you do a video on the Great Emu War? If you want to do it, if you want a video on the Great Emu War, I'll link this again, because I don't know if you were here, or if you're still around. But you can submit the idea there. But I will say that when it comes to the Great Emu War, there actually is a video by I think she's changed the name of her channel. It used to be called Nerdy and Quirky, but I think it's just called Sabrina Cruz now. And she made a video on the Great Emu War that I think is better than anything I could have made. So if you want a good Emu War video, you should probably go check out her channel. Alright, Jenga Tree, you're going to bed. See you later, man. Pseudo account. Can you talk about what's going on with Paul Manafort? The headlines say he's flipping, which I take to mean he's turned against Trump. I would imagine what that means usually in American law jargon is that they probably made some sort of plea bargain for Paul Manafort. So there's probably some sort of deal that the lawyers have worked out with Paul Manafort so that in order to avoid jail time or a more serious sentence, if he gives the goods on Donald Trump, then they might reduce his sentence and acknowledge that he cooperated in the trial. And that's a huge deal in America. And I think that you're probably going to see more of that's a thing that, because they're not. This happens a lot when you're when they're casing the mob, they'll arrest a low person in the organization, and then say we'll let you go if you can or we'll reduce your sentence or whatever if you can give the goods on somebody higher in the organization and do that all the way to the top. So this is just Mueller being a surprisingly a investigator in the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So this is how that works. So when they're saying that Manafort's close to flipping, it means that they've probably made some sort of deal, and Manafort and his lawyers are thinking that they're going to take it, or looking like they're going to take it. Salmonella did a good video on the Emu War. Yeah, the Salmonella Academy is a pretty good YouTube channel. It's pretty funny. So, okay. I don't know if the person who asked me questions about World of Warcraft, if they're still around, but I had something to add to that, but whatever. Argos, Panoptes, does Tristan know that what Yandir Simulator is? It has a very controversial developer. I have no idea who that is. I feel like I'm good in that sense. Okay. Yeah, the thing about all these people being brought over, it's because Mueller is trying to build a case against Trump. So the more people that he can flip, I think he's flipped Michael Cohen, and he's going to flip, if he's going to flip Paul Manafort, who was the sketchiest of the Trump campaign leaders. So he's definitely, if he can start flipping people and get them to testify against Trump in a future trial, then that would be significant. Getting Paul Manafort, who probably knows a lot, is good, because a lot of people, his kids and stuff, are never going to do it. They would never be expected to. But getting a lot of these business associates on board, especially if you can get, especially with Cohen. I actually am quite interested about Cohen, because I'm under the opinion that the thing that'll take Trump down is less his coercion, or whatever it's called, collusion in the election with Russia. That's not even actually a crime. What he did is not technically a crime. Lying about it is, but it's still not a big enough thing to take down a president. But the long history that Donald Trump has with organized crime will definitely be enough to take him down. And I do think that if there's anything that's really going to undo Trump, it's going to be mob connections. We'll see how that goes, though. Do you think that Manafort is a critical witness that could put the nail in the coffin, with the mob witnesses? That's fair. I think that's true in the Russia aspect. I think that Manafort, because he's worked a lot with Russian oligarchs and dictators and things like that, that if there's anybody who knows everything about what's going on with the Russia collusion story, it's going to be him. And so he's going to have the full story there. Don Trump, as my name is a play on words. Caveman 4, I trump you. I love your stuff, Tristan. Thank you for the answer on Space Force. Your assessments are always great. Oh, thank you. It's very nice. So yeah, I will be very curious. Like, I think that Paul Manafort flipping will be very interesting for what comes out. Like, the thing is, they don't want to say what these people have said, like what Michael Cohen and Manafort have said so far, because they don't want Trump's lawyers knowing what they know, because law, like crime, like trials like that are going to be it's information warfare. So they really don't want to tell anybody what they know yet. But once it comes out, it's gonna come out, and it's gonna be interesting. Oh, he has actual it's yeah, well, pseudo account, there's a couple things I can say to that. One, nobody builds that many buildings in New York City without making a few mob connections. Second of all, there was a Belgian documentary that came out a few years ago that basically outlined that Donald Trump had a whole bunch of connections with the New York mob. And I mean, like, given how much he's gotten in debt and then miraculously was able to raise a bunch of venture capital for buildings and things like that, like, there's a lot of signs that, yeah, he's in the mob. He's definitely a, if not a made man, he's definitely worked with the mob. So yeah, what I am hoping, my hope amongst everything with, because I don't think the Russia collusion stuff is going to result in anything that he can actually get convicted for, anything more than just like trying to shame a person who obviously has no sense of shame out of being president. What I just want the P-tape. I just want to know that the P-tape's real. I know it in my heart. I have faith. I have undying faith that the P-tape is real, and I cannot wait until that is confirmed. It'll make me feel so good. Oh, yeah, so speaking of his lawyers, the headlines say that his lawyers are telling Mueller that he can't testify. Can they do that? Yes. Basically, Mueller, basically the way that his lawyers are saying it is that he is such a pathological liar that he, like, it's actually like a psychological problem for him, and they're using that excuse to basically say that's why he can't testify, because there's no way that he won't self-perjure. Like, he can't avoid lying, because his attachment to reality is so, like, limited. So, like, I imagine they're going with an argument like that. The other thing, too, is that they could also make the argument that he could plead the fifth, or if he either pleading the fifth or saying that because he has privileged information he can't talk about this and that and this. I don't know. It's a flimsy argument, and it's not a great one. And I imagine that if the Mueller investigation gets to the point where they're like issuing out subpoenas to people, that Trump will not be able to weasel his way out of it. I don't know if it's an actual insanity plea. I actually don't know the details of what their argument is, but I can imagine there is a way to make that argument. I'm just not a high-powered lawyer, so I don't know what angle they're taking. Just like how with Alex Jones's trial, where they tried to make the argument that he was a performance artist and not like a actual political pundit. That was a way to try and keep custody of his kids. I don't think that that's actually, like, I think Alex Jones is a true believer. So, why would his lawyers use an insanity plea for our president? I don't know why. Would you ever be interested in doing some counterfactual videos like Cody does, theorizing about an aspect of history you talk about? I've mulled that over. I don't know, it's another, like, branching out in genre-wise. Like, alternate history I don't see as very educational. I see it more as a branch of fiction. And this way, I've told this to Cody. Like Cody's thought about trying to become educational, and be more educational. And I've sort of said to him like alternate history is a form of fiction, and you should lean into that. And I don't think that I need to become a better storyteller before I could tell alternate histories. And if I did, that would be a very different piece of content than what Step Back is making. And I really need to be more cognizant about the kinds of content that Step Back viewers want to see, and make sure that I'm not going too far off base. All right. I know slavery. Okay, Michael Collins. I know slavery's bad and I don't condone it, but would you rather be under Roman slavery or American slavery? Oh, that's not even a question. Roman slavery was. There is nothing that comes close to the brutality that was the American chattel slavery system. It was, except for like the slavery practiced in like sugar plantations in the Caribbean. Like, it was some of the worst things that humans have done to other humans. While like Roman slavery was very different. It was much more fluid. The identities were much more loose. Even in America, like in the 1600s and 1500s, the status of slave was a lot less like solidified until after Bacon's Rebellion. Like, for example, there's a book called Mine Own Ground, which is actually a book about a African man who was captured and brought into slavery in, I think, South Carolina. And then he managed to, because like slavery wasn't the same way that it was after Bacon's Rebellion, he managed to like work, like moonlight work, and make some extra money, and then was able to purchase his own freedom, and then was able to purchase his wife's freedom and his kids' freedom, and then he bought his own farm, and then his farm got successful enough that he was able to buy some of his own slaves. And that just shows how like it's like called like Atlantic studies in the Atlantic world, like the Creole Atlantic world was a very different place than what we think of like in the like the night like when we think of American slavery, we think of post cotton gin 19th century slavery, like slavery basically right before it ended in the American South, and it has changed a lot over the centuries. What's an ethical way of covering war? Is it against the law to show the consequences of bombing? I don't think it's against... I think it actually might be against the law now. But covering war, I do think that war is something that should be rare enough and is brutal and terrible enough that you should be showing like the like brutality and the horrible things that happen, and to ban that and to shy away from that, to censor that, is to make war more appealing, which I think is disgusting. Do you like Ayn Rand? What? No. No one should like Ayn Rand. No one. No. She's garbage. Do not read her things. Do not read books by Ayn Rand. And do not watch her speak. And anybody who says they like Ayn Rand is not someone you should take seriously as a person when they say things. Wasn't Bacon an aristocrat betraying his class? I think he was. Didn't the rebellion combine disaffected indentured servants and slaves? Yes, but I'm talking about the result of Bacon's rebellion, which was that the Virginia colony there, the Jamestown colony, I think it was, became much more dependent on African slaves after that, instead of using indentured servants. And that became the rule going forward. But yes, there were slaves in Bacon's rebellion. And didn't the rebellion inspire development of white supremacy? Yes, it did. That's why I said that Bacon's rebellion was the most significant event in American history. Um. Okay. Let's. We're rounding the corner. 29 more minutes. Let's see if I can get to the end of these questions before we run out of time. You said you lived in an apartment building. Do you live in a particularly high building? I think that Kelly answered in there that, like, yeah, it's like a 30-story building, and we live pretty low on it. Feels or reals? I don't think that. I think feels are reals. I don't think that they're mutually. I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. That was the word I was looking for. Radical reviewer, your favorite author or your favorite history author? Ooh, I am prone to Howard Zinn. Pretty good author, pretty good history author, I would say. I think that People's History of the United States was a pretty formative document to my development as a historian. Favorite author? That's a tough one. I used to be a really big fan of Michael Crichton before he went nuts. And then died. Oh, boy. I'm trying to think of a really, really good, like, a book that, like, seriously affected me for a long time. Oh, Charles C. Mann. That's an author that I really, really love. And he does history, too. He did the book 1491, which I think is my favorite history book that I've ever read. So let's go with that. Yeah. Michael Collins. Can Roman and American slavery even be compared? Not really. I mean, they were both coercive modes of extracting labor from people without pay, but they lived very different. Like, American slavery and Roman slavery were just extremely different worlds. Like, slaves were less treated like property in Rome, and more treated like a class of people. They were like people who lived in fancy rich people's estates, and they weren't paid, but they kind of were just employees. Like, they just worked for them, and often they got their capital through, like, social capital and rising through the ranks. And very often they, like in early examples in like kind of Creole America, they were able to purchase their freedom or didn't. Like, I think that we don't consider, like, how in the classical world, and this extends to an extent to the Islamic world as well, that there was slaves who had they were technically slaves, but they had very high prestigious jobs and positions, and they were actually very powerful individuals. And I think that when you're talking about slavery in, like, the classical world and the Islamic world, you have to realize you're talking about a very different thing than what happened in America. And I think, especially if you're an Islamophobe, that conflation, just because they both use the word slave, leads to a lot of missing out on the nuance there. Yeah, the Jurassic Park guy turned out to be a climate change denier, and wrote a whole book about eco-terrorists. And then he died, like, the day after Obama got elected. Yeah, like, in November, Michael Crichton's been dead for, like, 10 years. What do you think about the QAnon conspiracy? I think it is... After watching the Angie Speaks video this morning, I think it speaks to I think that she got onto some really cool points about how studying conspiracy theories as sort of a diagnostic about, like, what are the fears and pathologies of the society that this is about, is really interesting to me. And I think that there's to talk about QAnon and the QAnon conspiracy is sort of this way of trying to reinterpret the extreme like ineptitude of the Trump presidency into this like crazy weaved web of intricacies and very much like this like faith-based attitude towards what's happening, and just this complete lack of faith in public figures says a lot about American culture today. It also shows that baby boomers are extraordinarily gullible people, but that's a different discussion altogether. Yeah. Okay, so Michael Collins has another question. Is it true that Rome declined because they started conquering? Or they stopped conquering? Kind of. In many ways, that is true to an extent. It could also be true that they started crumbling because they grew too large and they incorporated little. I think that because they were so expansionist and because they cared little about making sure that people were, integrated into their empire, that they essentially fractured because they had this very flimsy imperial system based on being able to militarily dominate anybody who opposed them. But then Germans started to realize, hey, you're not invincible, and we can actually beat you because there's way more of us than you. So, like, yeah, like it's very much like how the Aztec Empire collapsed, because once the Spanish sort of introduced this, like showed how fragile the system of power and dominance worked, then it started to collapse over a long period of time. It also started to fall apart because you started to find gross mismanagement as the empire became, well, an empire, and as Roman emperors became less and less like good governors, and it turned more into a monarchy, and things started to become more mismanaged and more dictatorial. Yeah. Any theories about the author of the anonymous op-ed? No. I think that, if anything, like, I mean, the idea that it's Mike Pence might be good. I can't wait to see when Mike Pence exposes that he wrote it or something, and then all of, like, liberal Twitter goes like, oh man, Mike Pence is great. He's like, this resistance hero, and just like Steve Bannon, who got invited and then disinvited to like a sort of like liberal event, and how like Sean Spicer got to go on the Golden Globes. Like maybe if Trump fires his vice president, I don't think he can do that. But if like he becomes alienated from the presidency, then like he's going to become this like resistance figure. And like, yeah, he wants to like treat women like brood mares, but he no like the person I know like, so therefore he my best friend. It seems to be a running line on centrist internet, which I'm worried about. Hence the real reason why I want to make my video about how George Bush is a war criminal, and we should not be redeeming him in any way. No matter how many Werther's Originals he gives to Michelle Obama. The Lapis Apple Gaming. For things like alternate history or alternate future, there are many mapping videos and channels I suggest you check out. I've watched many mapping channels and alternate history channels. I used to read those alternate history scenarios that were like on wikis and stuff, and I was just like, it's not my bag. I like alternate history as a setting, but it has to tell a good story. I think there's some interesting stuff that comes out, but in the end, it's speculation, and I feel like alternate histories are more fun to make than to read, I guess is the thing I would say. Um, what's your different definition of a modern liberal? Well, liberalism as an ideology is a a political system that is based on um, basically freedom of like freedom for things that don't actually require any material investment. So it's like free speech and freedom of expression, but then when it comes to anything that requires like any actual muscle behind it, like economic equality or social justice or anything that requires like work, then they're against it. So it's like it's all of like the cheap and easy freedoms and none of the ones that take work. um, but liberalism is like that's like it's an ideology that's based around maximizing freedom, but at the same time um, they have the counter. I guess it's intuitive now because they basically control political discourse, but the counter factual idea that somehow that unregulated markets and a economy based on a small class of people owning all of the owning basically everything that makes the economy function is somehow an expression of freedom, and it's like fundamental flaw. See you later, Luke Lee. We're going to be wrapping up here in probably about 15 minutes or so, depending upon how the energy goes. Can the public view the Steele document? I actually don't know what the Steele document is. I'm sorry. To what extent do you believe that white supremacy was essential to the creation of American democracy and egalitarianism? Like in the way that a way that Americans saw, like the people who founded the United States saw the way that American egalitarianism and democracy would work. I mean, white supremacy was a pretty big part of... I don't even know. I think that, like, in many ways, white supremacy was not a thing that came out of... it came out of their liberal beliefs, because liberalism literally developed as, like, a way to kind of take, like, the petit bourgeoisie of the New World and try to, like, justify why they are... they're, like, part of the natural aristocracy that worked their way to privilege, which is a funny concept. But in many ways, they were very paradoxical in their then support of white supremacy and slavery. But I do think that when it comes to, like, the United States, like, yeah, the United States was built on white supremacy. It was the coerced labor of African people, of African bodies, as the more theory-minded people would say. The coerced labor of African bodies is what built the economy of the United States. Without slavery, the United States would not be in the economic privileged position it's in. If they had guaranteed justice for everybody, they would not be where they are. They needed to keep people under the lash in order to keep their economy running. And I think that's, like, if you think about, like, the Civil War and everything like that, like, that was the chief paradox that tore that country apart. You forgot to say after the Space Aztec streams that actually got me into looking at the game, and now I got Stellaris and I love it, so thanks. Awesome. I'm really excited. I really want to when Stellaris is they're doing a new expansion in probably a few months, and part of it is going to be this major rework of the economy, and I am super interested and on board, and I like eagerly anticipate every dev diary to find out what's going on with this, like, rework of the economy and the rework of planets and stuff like that. So I think that the week that comes out, we're gonna do, like, I know what Step Back Tonight is going to be about when that comes out. You could say that of white countries. Basically, white countries were built on slavery. I mean, yeah, that's basically that's a pretty good the reason why quote unquote white countries are so economically privileged above the rest of the world is because of the advantages they got through colonization and the exploitation of slave labor. Like the reason why France is a rich country and I don't know, the Democratic Republic of Congo isn't, is because the French basically were extracting the labor and resources of a huge chunk of the planet for centuries. And there's really no way for other countries to catch up in that, no matter how many infrastructure projects you set up in those countries. It's really going to be a matter of there's going to need to be a matter of expropriation. Tristan, well, have you thought about the idea that the Jews denied from the U.S. and the Canada train? Geez, that's a nightmare. Yeah, the fact that we turned so many people away that then were sent into the heart of darkness it's a pretty terrifying and tragic thing, and I think about that a lot, especially when I see people complaining about us not about taking refugees, like Syrian refugees, and with the growing Islamophobia in the United States and in Europe, I start to worry that Canada needs to start taking way more refugees, because there's countries that are becoming increasingly hostile towards this group of people, and I'm worried that they're not going to have a safe place to go before long. And I don't know how to help with that. Yeah. There's a political comic with Africa hollowed out and piled on top of North America and Europe. Yeah, basically. Most Eastern and Central European countries are rich in per capita GDP, yet didn't colonize or enslave. What's your reason for that? Some of those countries got artificial development very rapidly as part of post-World War II development. Also, countries like, for example, Germany. Germany actually did have colonies. We just choose to forget that. But Germany was a colonial power to a much lesser extent, but still. On top of that, they were very close in the European system, and because they were able to benefit from trade with other countries in Europe, they were able to benefit greatly. Is there a lot of dislikes on this video? That's kind of sad. Oh well. I think it's there's some people who I imagine clicked in, didn't see a step back video, and then they were like, what the hell is this? Dislike, and then they were out. Or yeah, there were a couple people who came in and trolled and got mad at me and yeah, whatever. I'll live with it. And maybe people thought it was boring. Maybe next week I'll have to jazz things up a little bit more. Yeah. I mean, the idea of the fatalistic idea that, oh yeah, slavery was a bad thing that happened back then, so we don't have to worry about it today, is, I think, there's some problems with that. I think that it doesn't acknowledge the, lasting impact that kind of thing happens. Slavery, even though slavery is technically over in some of these countries, it's still not gone. Slavery still exists in the world. And there are like levels of economic exploitation happening that are almost at slave level, but it doesn't factor into like the lasting legacy that slavery has, both to benefit the countries that practiced slavery, and the long-term like scars that slavery leaves on countries and societies and cultures, like even decades later, even multiple generations later, especially if you don't address the inequality when you end slavery, like in the U.S., where they basically did nothing after freeing slaves. Alrighty. Yeah, like slavery, like just ending slavery is not enough. You have to kind of undo the theft, the theft of labor and the theft of resources from these parts of the world, which we haven't done, and we seem to refuse to do. You need reparations. You need assets. You need your 40 acres and a mule that never came. That's why, like, I want to, if I were to make, like, alternate history scenarios, I'd want to make, like, more interesting, like everyone's done, like, whoa, what if the Confederacy won the Civil War? Like, what if, like, the radical Republicans got what they wanted at the end of the Civil War? Like, what if their idea of tearing down the entire economic and political and social structure of the South and reconstructing it as a land of free men, free women, and freedom, basically. Like, what if, like, Thaddeus Stevens became president or something after Lincoln, or after the impeachment of Andrew Johnson or something. Like, I would love to see that. That's why I was really excited for the Black America, Amazon series that I don't know what stage production that's in. I wish that it had happened, but I think it's might be in development hell. Then I could also, like, I wish that sometimes I wish we could use alternate history to imagine better worlds than the one we live in. I'd love to see an America that, like, after the American Revolution, outlawed slavery. Like, across the board. What would that look like? There's a lot of things you could do. There's a lot of interesting scenarios, but we seem to gravitate to, what if the right-wing reactionary governments in the past won instead of lost? And it's like, that's like, we've done that. It's boring. What if Henry Wallace beat Truman in the 1944 VP candidate selection? That would be super cool. All right. I think we're coming close to the end of this time. I am definitely running out of energy. I've been talking for 3 straight hours. So I think I'm going to call it a night for you folks. But this has been the first stream. I would love to hear feedback about what kind of things you'd like to see for next week. I think that just talking to you guys is fun, and I could definitely see doing it. I'd like to see if I can throw some more stuff, especially some more stuff where I can hear from you guys, or maybe get guests on or something like that. Anyways, I think that I'm going to give you guys, I think you guys were great. I thought this was really fun, and I hope to see you guys next week. Yeah. Have a good night, everybody.